Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to Toronto Spirit Society. Welcome everyone who is watching us on Facebook. And today we are actually streaming to YouTube for the first time. So if you're joining us from the YouTube, give us your feedback and how the streaming is going for you. Today is actually the last lecture of 2017. Just as a reminder to everyone, we are only going to be back here at the TSS on January the 7th for another lecture. So we are in preparation mode for Christmas. And I know different people have different feelings about Christmas. But this month we have been reflecting on the only feeling about Christmas that we could have, which is the true meaning of Christmas. And I won't steal Tiago's thunder because today is his lecture. And the question that he proposes to all of us is, are we ready for Christmas? So let's reflect on that. But before we get into it, we'll have Dani with the initial reading and our friend Otto with the initial prayer. And then we'll pass the podium to Tiago for the lecture. Daniel.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Do not let the insult someone hurls at you ruin your day. Certainly, there are people who do not like you and even hate you. But this is no surprise, because you have the same feelings in regard to others. There is plenty of kind, notable people around you, so it's not right to waste time on those who constitute an exception on your path. Leave the offense on the floor of forgetfulness and continue in the direction of the love that awaits you.
Let us all close our eyes and be thankful for this opportunity of being here today together, the incarnate and discarnate, in another step towards evolution, learning everything that we can through our brother Tiago, so that we can get at least a little bit closer to our Master Jesus. Let us all also be thankful for the opportunity of being alive in this journey, in this world. Let's be thankful for everybody who is here with us today, sharing this opportunity. And let's also think positively and help our brother Tiago to be enlightened for the lecture today. Thank you, and so be it. Tiago?
Thank you, and good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It is great to feel that enthusiasm, feeling like there are 150 people here, and hopefully there are. We just can't see them right now, and hopefully we can share with each other that good feeling that the season brings for us, because I believe that, especially here in Canada, sometimes we feel so cold that we need to figure out ways to feel warm. From inside, from outside, with each other. So let's share that warmth within ourselves right now, and then we can go forward. And this month we are talking about Christmas. And my first reflection right away is, we Spiritists, or trying to be Spiritists, as I say, I try to reflect more, try to act more based on certain premises that we learn about, that we study about But every single December, we talk about Christmas. And here we go, living that cycle. Is there anything wrong with that? No, there is nothing wrong with that. But that is interesting to reflect about that. Every single December, we draw ourselves to talk about Christmas, its meaning, its essence, what is the reason why Christmas exists, and what can we take from that, and always trying to reflect, what are we doing today that may reflect or not the essence of Christmas. So then we had great lectures during this month. I had the opportunity to watch some of them with Danielle and other folks here. And they were on point, talking about values, talking about qualities that we develop, and talk about the feelings, the sentiments, and the essence of what Christmas is for us. And when we transcend the attitude that we have only in December to every day of our lives. We're not going to talk about anything so different from that, but I will try to bring for us here a very down to the ground perspective, asking that question and inviting you to ask that question. Are we really ready for Christmas? And based on what Christmas really is for us. Very easy for us to talk about Christmas and say that we're going to get together, we're going to exchange presents, and we're going to get together with family. Very easy, right? I will challenge a little bit that point of view. Imagine if we come from a family where we struggle with each other. And it is a challenge for us to get along. It is a challenge for us to conciliate different points of view in our lives, that we have so many different opinions, and we have different faiths within the same family. So are we ready for that Christmas? I don't know. At the first sight, apparently, that earthly Christmas is very easy, but not even that Christmas is that easy for some people. Many of us are far from those who we would like to spend this time of the year with. Is that easy? Not necessarily. Sometimes we may be from a different faith, and I always relate with people from different faith, and I ask them, during this time of the year, what you do? What are your, costumes? Is this time of the year important for you as it is for some Christians? And some people say that it is fine for them. Some people say that they find difficult to find a place, a common place sometimes, or to find a place where they can feel that they belong, because this time is so embedded in one specific costume, based on one specific faith. So then we already can challenge ourselves, asking ourselves, are we ready for this? And then we can think about so many things. And let's try to go through them briefly. And the first thing, of course, that I would like to do is to go through what I say, it is a bit of an understanding why we have that expectation sometimes, why we have that feeling that something is coming when Christmas is coming. Of course that we talk about the birth of Jesus. And historically, and we know because we've been through that cycle, we've been through that for centuries and centuries and centuries. We've lived before through those cycles. We are living it again. And we know that the announcing of Christmas, the announcing of the birth of Jesus, is happening since hundreds and hundreds of years before Jesus came. The project of Christmas, it was a more than 1,000-year-old project. Many of the prophets in the Old Testament were announcing Jesus. were announcing that boy, the Son of God, the one that will come to bring light to the darkness. The poor boy that would be born in a manger and would be the Savior of the people that were enslaved during that time. So then if we take one day some time and go back to the Old Testament, understanding that, imagine how many people were in hope for something new. How many people were enslaved? How many people were suffering, waiting for a transformation that would come to them to take them away from captivity, to take them away from so much difficulty. They needed a leader. They had Moses back in their time that really drove them through an entire desert with a promise of a land where would have honey and milk flowing, because they were in need of something new. And the promise of a consoler, the promise of a Savior, is something that the people are carrying for so long. Not only until Jesus, but sometimes we are still today looking for more light. Because it is not only Jesus coming, but it is us accepting that. And that's another question. Are we ready for that? Some were ready back in that time. Are we ready today for that? Isaiah was one of the greatest prophets that talked about the coming of Jesus. And I'm just putting a couple of the passages of the Old Testament. We don't need to go through that in detail. But it is very clear that in 700 before Christ, in the time more or less that Isaiah lived, he was already talking about a child that would be born, a son that would be given to the people. And his name would be the Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, and the one that we know very well, the Prince of Peace. 700 years before Jesus, they were already talking about him. So imagine how much there was in the air. How much people were already creating space within themselves to receive that Messiah, to receive that Counselor that would bring peace to their souls that were very troubled. And we also have the prophet Zechariah that also prophesied. And it is interesting because not only he talks about the birth of Christ, but he talks about exactly how Jesus goes to Jerusalem right before his prison, when he says that your king is coming to you, righteous in having salvation, humble and mounted on a donkey. And here is the remark that I make for you. Humble and mounted on a donkey. Already, the announcing of Jesus marks an important lesson for us. How did Jesus come to this world? Marks for us one of the greatest lessons that Christmas is in essence. Sorry that it's probably a little dark, but you can imagine that in the darkness of the night, when Jesus was born, and there was no place in any guest house back in Bethlehem, and Mary needed to deliver Jesus in a stable. We talk about a manger, something beautiful. He was born in a stable full of animals around. And it's a place that we go if we wanted to go horseback riding, pet the animals in the zoo, and then we are out from there. And that's where Jesus was born. The Prince of Peace, the great Counselor, The most illuminated spirit that comes to earth is born in the simplest of the places. And that is the first lesson that we have. Every single project that starts in this life needs to start with simplicity. His life among us started simple, without ostentation, without flashing. There was not a big announcement. He was surrounded by shepherds. And in Luke, we have a beautiful passage of the birth of Jesus when they were traveling. Joseph, Mary were traveling, and they couldn't find a place to be. They found a stable that was given to them to deliver the baby. And there were shepherds around. And they were already probably hearing all those stories that we were talking about, knowing about the prophets, knowing about the stories of the upcoming of the Messiah. They receive the vision of an angel. And the angel comes to those shepherds and say, hey, follow that light. You will find your Savior. And there they go. And when they find Jesus in the simplicity of his birthplace, here comes another beautiful passage that is known for many of us, that all of them said, glory to God in the highest. Probably some of you remember that. And on earth, peace among those with whom he is pleased. It was in that moment the announcing of the peace, of the simplicity, of the humbleness for us to live in its fullness. And for the next 30-something years, Jesus growing, developing, and putting in action his plan for us, he starts showing us and giving examples of that peace, giving examples of that humbleness, of that simplicity, and the righteous path for us, in order for us to illuminate ourselves as well. So, the manger that we're talking about then is a space of hope, is a space of dreams, is a space of a new beginning. And that new beginning, we are here already talking beyond the promise of a new year, but also we can talk about the promise of a new year, because the birth of Jesus happens very close to what it is the beginning of a new year for us as well. Do we need to push that aside? No. Can we renew our hopes? Of course. Can we renew our desires for a better tomorrow? Yes, of course. Can we live that enclosed in 1 month? Well, you can if you want. Many of us do. But here is Jesus showing us that that hope can be renewed always, because he didn't stop. And he worked with us every day. And he asks us to do the same. He invites us to do the same. It is hope for freedom for that people. It is also the hope for freedom today. When we talk about freedom, freedom from what? We live in a free country. We live in a free society. We were talking this morning before the lecture. Do we live free from technology? Do we live free from Amazon today delivery? I was actually, just opening brackets here, I was listening today to a radio program talking about the imminent collapse of the logistics system in the world, because we don't realize how much that we are creating cardboard boxes in the world. And we are more and more, we are crazy for like faster this and more efficient that. And the speed of this needs to be higher. And the comfort needs to be this and that. And then suddenly we get caught on that desire to have everything on our hands. And we see ourselves fighting over deadlines and bumping our shoulders in shopping centers and malls. And here we are talking about hope for freedom. And still today, we can think about what do we want to be free from? What do we want to free ourselves from? Or what we want when Jesus tells us, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And that truth that we are trying to reach, I'm not the best one to reach the truth with you, but I am trying as well. That's why instead of are you ready for Christmas, I wrote down, are we ready for Christmas? Because that Christmas in the beginning is that search, is the first step to search for the true meaning of how do we want to start to change. How do we want to put the hopes that we have into action and realize them and make them truth for us and for everyone? And here we have, from the beginning, the promise of Christmas. Are we ready to go through the desert in search for that promised land? It is the promise, the beginning. At the same time, we have, and again, we're talking about cycles. That is the beginning. But always with a beginning comes an end. And Jesus also taught us something. From the manger to the cross. And here we're going to stop a little bit and contemplate what Jesus can teach us about Christmas from the message of the cross. Is there Christmas here? I was very fortunate to find beside the cross an eagle flying. And here we commonly say that the cross is the symbol of death. Cross is the symbol of the end of a project, the end of a cycle, the end of life. For many that we know, the end of a relationship that was important for us. The end of a connection that was meaningful. Simply the end. There is fear attached to it, isn't there? There is some uncertainty, uneasiness attached to it. If we are just left with that symbol as the cross, as the end, what is left of us? Is there anything else? Oh, there is. There is. The hope we can carry from that manger here to that cross, because there is hope. And Jesus told us that there is hope. The cross was transformed 3 days after in life. Jesus came back himself to say, hey, that was the crowning of what I needed to do. It starts simple. It ended simple. But it didn't end, actually. Now we can talk about the real life. The promise of life after the cross is an important message for us that can resignify our entire existence. If that is only the end, what is the meaning of even starting? But if the end is not the end, but it is another step for another realm, for another stage of our existence, everything changes. Death, as we know it, is inevitable. Is inevitable. Therefore, there is something very important to learn from it. Let's think as death as a book. Do we want to read that book at the end of the journey that we were writing? What was your book? What was my book? A fairy tale? For some. A fantasy? An adventure? Conquest? A thriller? Or a very scary book that you are afraid to read again? Which one? And that is important because here we are facing that cross and being able to envision that in one day we will face ourselves. That cross is the inevitable to face ourselves and the results of who we are. The results of who we are to the world, to each other, to ourselves. But the most interesting thing, and I wanted to bring the beginning and I wanted to bring the end because we are so sometimes attached to it, to the beginnings, to the ends, to the goals, to the to the finish line. But more important even than the beginning and the end is something huge in between. And Christmas, as I'm trying to reflect about while I'm making that lecture and I'm preparing that, and I'm looking at and I said, between those two radical points and landmarks, that is the vast majority of our lives. Yes, that is a way to start. And as we all know, we all start plain, simple. We all may have the same destination at the end of our journey. But in between is really what matters. That would change how we understand our beginnings. And that will change how we like to get there at the finish line. And that's what I call Christmas in between. Jesus comes back after the cross and tell everyone, keep living, keep healing the sick, keep bringing the dead to life, keep loving one another, because you will have the help that you need in order to accomplish all of that is good. And when we talk about our lives, when we talk about what is the meaning of our lives, and what we need to accomplish during these lives, and what is important for us to carry as essence, in this case, what is the essence of Christmas for us? Thinking that we are expanding that point of view of Christmas, one, to more than 1 month, to more than one life, and also to more than one specific action in our lives. we start looking back to ourselves and looking within and saying, am I ready? And what can I do to live Christmas within myself? Between the manger and the cross, there was the mount. And it is not the first time that I bring that. It is not new. It is not revolutionary for me to come to you and say it. But it is revolutionary when Jesus sits down on the top of the mount, looks to all those people that were still desperate, they were still thirsty, they were still hungry and tired, and looks to them and say, you are all blessed. You are all worth. You matter. And Jesus looks to everyone. He didn't make any distinction of rich, poor, sick, healthy, white, black, where they came from. He made absolutely no distinction. He didn't pick one specific time to teach and to look at each one and tell them how much he loved all of them. And he loves all of us. But not only that, not in a passive way. Jesus looked to everyone and said, hey, I'm telling you that I love you, but I'm telling you that there is love inside you as well. I'm telling you that you matter, but you also can tell others that they matter. I'm telling you that you are rich no matter how poor you are, because there is a wealth within each one of you that not only you can prosper from, but you gotta share. And then here comes Jesus and tells everyone, you are blessed for your humbleness. Blessed are you that are humble, that are simple. And when Jesus says that, let's think in between. No more and no less than what you really are. To be humble is not to be subservient to anyone and not to be arrogant to anyone. It's to find our own place. To be exactly who we are. Not to subjugate ourselves and make ourselves less than others, because there is no use for us in doing that. But also not to be arrogant to anyone. Not to pretend that we are more than anyone else, because we are not. Always there will be someone ahead of us. Always. And here we are, in between arrogance and subjugation, our place of simplicity, where we can feel free to be ourselves. Jesus said, blessed are you who cry. And here when Jesus tells us, blessed are you who cry, he's basically telling us, blessed are you when you are in touch with your own feelings. You have feelings to feel. You cry when you're sad. Jesus cried when his friend Lazarus died. But not to be immersed in negativity. Not to search for voluntary suffering. And also, in the other spectrum, not to deny that we have feelings that we can embrace. We may not like some of those feelings, but we feel them. And it's authentic. So here's Jesus telling us to be authentic with our own sentiment. To be true to who we are and how we feel. Between denial and self-loathing Here is the place where we can be free to welcome our feelings. Jesus said, "Blessed are you who are thirsty and who are hungry for justice." What is Jesus trying to tell us with that? We cannot be insensitive to the wrongdoing. We cannot be insensitive to evil, to injustice, to discrimination, to misogyny, to any of what doesn't do good to others. Not to be insensitive to injustice, but at the same time, in the other spectrum, not to try to do justice with our own hands. Because there is a justice that is also above us. Here we are between being insensitive and enabling, and between making justice with our own hands. Here we are, the place where we can live rightly, following the justice that today earth gives us, but at the same time understanding that there is a justice that is divine. And through that divine justice that we will live better, because the justice that is divine, it is a justice that has mercy built in, that has love built in, that has forgiveness built in, that has rehabilitation built in, that doesn't see anyone for what they do wrong, but see everyone for their potential to recover. That is the justice that is divine, that Jesus is inviting us to live. And Jesus also told us, "Blessed are we when we are gentle." And the gentleness that we can have, being more giving to others with tenderness, not to be harsh, not to be violent, but at the same time not to be so passive, condescending. So in between the condescending attitude and the harshness of attitude that we can have to others, we can act with gentleness. Not to let other people think that everything that they do is okay, but at the same time not close ourselves to show any goodness and benevolence to others, no matter who they are and what they do. Blessed are us when we are gentle. Blessed are us when we are merciful. Blessed are us when we forgive. And every step that Jesus invites us to take, more He reaches within our souls all that we are needed to improve, to change, to transform, to make it real every day. Because many times, in the name of forgiveness, we let others step on us. And that also leads us nowhere. And the other spectrum, instead of forgiving, we are vengeful. We want to see them pay every single penny that they took from us, as if this will bring any good to us. So in between, letting everyone step on us, because it is a misunderstanding of when Jesus tells us, if someone hits you in one face, you give the other one. Basically, Jesus is telling us, don't repay evil with evil. Don't repay wrongdoing with wrongdoing. Show the other side. Pay evil with good. Pay an offense with a forgiveness. Pay a yelling with a silence. Here starts to become very challenging sometimes when I think about myself, if I'm really ready for Christmas. You know, we have 1 week for Christmas. Am I ready to all of that? But here we are being invited to really live that Christmas that Jesus is inviting us to live. And of course, blessed are us when we are peacemakers. When we not only like peace, and here we are not talking about being peace lovers. We're talking about being peacemakers. When we live in peace. When we search for peace. When we do not wage wars. To fight the war that we don't want to see. Because the greatest missionaries in this world were the ones that were able to bring peace in a world of war with peace. And that is a challenge. We don't need to go that far. But as we spoke before, maybe it is a good challenge for us to take when we are able to create peace in our home. When we are able to live in peace among so many different ideas, among so many different perspectives, among not agreeing with someone. Can we disagree in peace? Disagree is okay. I don't need to agree with everyone. Can we disagree in peace? Between being passive and raging war, here we are, trying to make a better world for us, for everyone. And blessed are those who are persecuted. That is an interesting one. Blessed are us who are persecuted. That was difficult for me to understand too. I needed to dig a little more. And what is the essence of this? The decision to follow a good cause implies that we need renunciation. We need to renounce something. We need to devote ourselves to something. Not necessarily will be understood. There are certain subjects that when we put on the table and we are up for the task to bring a good cause to the table, we may not be understood simply. We may be mocked. Our ideas may be put into a second level. We may not be heard. We may be laughed upon. And involves a little bit of sacrifice. But the sacrifice that we are talking here, is sometimes sacrifice being accepted all the time. Sacrifice that idea that I need to be loved all the time. And to do that, I need to please everyone. I may have a good idea, but I'm not going to put that idea into practice because I need to please someone, even though this person has a completely different point of view than I have. Therefore, what I'm sacrificing is my potential to have a good idea put in practice. But when we decide on a project that is good, it involves dedication, devotion, renunciation. To renounce of something is a challenge. To renounce that place of being right all the time. And finally, Jesus tells us, blessed are us when we have purity of heart. Here, in order to bring that down to the ground, in order for us to feel that we are able, even though in the level of evolution that we are, to have more purity of heart, it is to see things with good eyes. It is to see people for the qualities that they have. It is to see life for what it can give that is good. Not denying what is bad, but making sure that the good prevails. We know bad exists. What is not good is there. It is making that choice. Having purity of heart is to choose good over evil. Is to choose doing good over doing bad. Is to pick one side. That is the side of life. That is the side of goodness. That is the side of conciliation. That is the side of peace, justice, simplicity, forgiveness. That is the putting in practice the purity of heart. And that is recognizing in us our shadow and our light, our human and our divine. To be inclusive with ourselves. We have good. We have not so good. We have our humanity that we need to honor. And we have our divine that we need to nurture. That is a little bit of Jesus' Christmas that He's inviting us to live. To live more fully. To live more freely. To live more truly. Jesus is inviting us. He's been doing that for a very long time. He's very perseverant. And He trusts in everyone. From birth to death, our greatest challenge is to live. Are we ready to live our lives? Recognizing that we came from somewhere. Recognizing and accepting that we are going to reach a turning point. An end, as to speak. Flipping the page to another chapter. It is a very defining moment for us that makes us reflect. Reflect on what we are doing today. And rewrite those pages. So then we can read them tomorrow and be enlightened with so many interesting lines that we ourselves wrote. That others one day, not pretentiously, but Jesus gave us a very interesting book to read. Because it is a book full of light, full of reflection, full of invitation. No, His Christmas is those steps that we want to give, but we want others ahead of us to give as well and to surpass us. No, being present. We talk about present, right? Being present besides giving a present, right? No, to face our challenges because we have them. He's inviting us to do that, to be better. I need to know what is not letting me be better. I need to know what is not letting me grow. That's the only way that I can fix it, so then I can grow. Making an active effort to be better. And to open the door for the diversity. We live in a diverse world. A world that presents so many ideas, so many different directions to everything. And you know what? In those places that we least imagine, with the people that we least imagine, that might be the wisdom that is needed for us to see things, life, and people in a different way. And then go forward. And I talk about diversity because Jesus didn't tell us that to live Christmas we need to be Christians necessarily. Because Jesus looked to everyone and say, if you fed the hungry, you fed me. If you put clothes in someone that was naked and cold, you clothed me. And if you gave food to the hungry, if you gave shelter to those who were on the open, you did all of that to me. Without charity, which is a very abstract word, if we don't understand all those steps that we can give, all those values that we need to look to ourselves in order to develop, that's then we can condense everything and say charity. Without charity, there is no salvation. Not without Spiritism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, or anything. Christmas for Jesus may have a tree decorated, and we'll have ourselves decorating each other's lives as well, with good words, with colorful feelings, with beautiful attitude. It will have a present that we give, and we will have ourselves to give to others as a present. It will have everyone together on the table, but not only sharing a meal, but sharing the experiences that we have with each other, the good feelings that we can have with each other, sharing the respect and the tolerance to have someone that is different from me on the table. That is the Christmas that Jesus is inviting us to partake. Jesus is telling us there is no end for our journey. If we are suffering, there is a life for us to live in order to fight that suffering. We don't end anything, even though we may think we do. We can introduce to our loved ones, in fact, the most important present that Christmas can give to anyone. That is not wrapped in any package. It is whose birthday it is, because we asked that question before. We can bring the masterpiece, the centerpiece of every Christmas. And when we talk about Jesus, we are not talking about imposing anyone's religion, but we are talking about values that we learn, we put in practice, and we can only show as the masterpiece, as the centerpiece on our table if we live it. So then are we ready to bring that centerpiece, put on the table and said, there is here the bread of life to be shared, the living water to be shared for everyone to nurture themselves, the simplicity that we can be to others, not to obfuscate their own light, and also be the light that we want to be for the world. Not only to give the taste to the food that we put on the table, but Jesus told us we are the salt of the earth. So which taste we are giving to each other's lives as well. We can give that taste of love the same way that Jesus sits down with his own friends and say, you are my friends and I love you for that, and I will follow you and I will defend you and I will keep loving you every day, not only in December. We can dare. It is a daring invitation. Can we live Christmas in July? Can we live Christmas without any object as a vehicle of our intentions to each other? Are we ready to invite Christ for our Christmas and give him the opportunity to feel that he belongs? He already told us. bring each other to the table. Look at each other like you would like to be seen. And we will be together, sharing Christmas, living Christmas. This season, next week, when we sit down next week, we don't need to steer anything on the table, but we can bring something different, beautiful, bright, through our words, through our attitude. Understanding that whatever we are giving to each other, there is feeling attached to it. There is sentiment, there is intention. We don't need to be close. One phone call, one Skype call to someone to remind them how important they are for us. That is Christmas. So let's share that warmth that for sure we can give to each other. To anyone, at home, outside, every day. Jesus is inviting us, live Christmas. I just would like to end with the Spirit Emmanuel, that brilliantly put in very simple words what I would like to say in this entire lecture. Christmas, good news, goodwill. Let's offer sympathy to all and start to live really with Jesus under the splendor of a new day. And we know that a new day happens every single day. So let's live Christmas every single day. Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiago.
Thank you.
We do have a few minutes here. Any questions from anyone or any comments? And I have to multitask today.
Oh, great.
I keep my eyes on you here.
Yep.
So Ellie said, thank you, Tiago.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for being with us,
Merry
Ellie.
Christmas, yes.
Oh, no questions from anyone here. So anyone has a questions, you can type. I really do have a personal comment. I was making an effort, personal effort, because there's so much in the message of Jesus for us, and I feel, as you said, well, every year for us is a new page in our life, in this incarnation. Our book may have 100 pages. We don't know, right? Some of us are halfway through. Some are at the beginning of the book. Some are more advanced. But here comes a new year, and Christmas is really an invitation for us to remind us of why we are here. And Jesus gave us the path between the beginning and the end, when he was born and when he passed in the cross and came back to remind us, right? It is an invitation for us to reflect in our values. And I'm thinking personally, at my home, I think it's an opportunity for me and my wife to look each other in the eye, and is this going to be another year where, we go crazy to exchange gifts and eat? And what are we teaching our kids? Is that the Christmas we are teaching them? Or even ourselves individually, even if your partner doesn't share the same values of you, the same interests of you, it's not an excuse for not doing that. It's internal, right? The sympathy. And for those who have been married for a while, know that marriage is renunciation, right? And my wife knows that I'm not very good at it, and she's watching. But I have been trying 17 years. I think every year you learn a little bit more, but it's renunciation. And sometimes, even if we aspire to live this, if you don't find sympathy in our partner, let's have patience and let's have the commitment ourselves to live those principles, to forgive, right? Yeah. To look at our inner transformation, because next year, as Tiago said, well, it's another year where we should live these principles every single day. Christmas, it should be every single day. And that's why some people have a bad taste about Christmas. They say, well, why talk about that during Christmas? You should do that every day. Yes, we should, but we are imperfect. Yeah. And Christmas is that reminder for all of us, hey, another year is gone. Look back. Have we lived that? No? Okay, it's time to restart. It's an invitation. Because God never closes the doors for us. We always have an opportunity to resume or to start. So to me, this is a big, big invitation, and I would like to invite you all to look in the eyes of your partners at home and have that conversation. How can we make this Christmas different and more meaningful? If not for us, to our kids. And if we are alone, if you don't have a partner with us at home, sit with yourself and talk to yourself, to your guardian angel. Do a prayer, do an inner reflection. How can I, myself, do this differently and carry this on differently? Especially in a time where we are trying to come up with our year-end New Year's resolutions. I think those are long-lasting New Year resolution. Right?
If I want to point something out too, thinking about the beginning and the end and life that we live, just came to my mind. I live actually a lot of also my wife's life, because the family that I have here is her family. So then I say that during Christmas time, that is the beginning and the end all the same time. Because to go for Christmas, I go through the way of the cross to go and see people. Because we need to travel so much. So then it is like a sacrifice to go from place to place, from house to house to visit everyone. But at the end of the day, instead of me being upset with that, I enjoy for one specific reason. It is the time that I have to see them. It is the time, because some of them live far. And if I am just thinking about, because we just get together on Christmas, and if I don't go, I don't see them ever. And then sometimes Christmas really brings something that is completely different. We make the effort to do a trip that we don't do any other time of the year, but we do during Christmas. Mm-hmm. That is some energy that we end up using, and that is not a coincidence. And that is not mystical either. But we know that during this time of the year, collectively, we gather more energy. We talk about something good more often, more frequently. Mm-hmm. And why not use that energy and to really make it work? And to really make it be special and to really make it different anyway.
Yeah. It's a comment here from Elle that it's an overwhelming season, but with God in our hearts, everything is possible. Yeah, sometimes it's overwhelming when we reflect on that and our progress or little progress. Yep. Denise says, thank you, Tiago and Clay. What an inspiring lecture. Thank you, Denise and Ellie and Maria Clara, Michelle, everyone who joined us. We reached at the end. We would like to thank you all for coming. We wish you a Merry Christmas. And may this Christmas Jesus bless us all with his inspiration that we so much need for the new year coming. We will see you again in January the 7th after this. Thank you, Tiago, for the lecture.
Thank you.
And we'll say goodbye right now as we prepare for the passes. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas again, everyone.